Hello and welcome to another episode of ClearTalk. Today I'm joined with Matt Barnette, CEO of PSA. Welcome, Matt. It's good to see you again.
Thanks, Joel. Appreciate being here.
To help us understand a little bit about your membership, you want to describe PSA a little bit for us?
Sure, absolutely. PSA is the world's largest integration consortium. We have roughly 220 members, part of PSA Security network in North America, and another 100 members of our AV or technology division called Edge. So we support the integrators in both sides of the market with not only buying programs, but other services and access to the network, providing the communication between the integrators, best practices, and we also help them share jobs and leads by bringing them in on projects when they have customers that are outside their home territory. So we really try to be the glue to help the integration channel be better at what they do.
Thanks, and I really appreciate you joining us today because we're going to talk about a topic that I think crosses so many different integrators and perspectives. I think having the value of such a large organization will help our listeners really get a grasp of the size of this. And so our topic today is, how does inflation impact the integrator? I've got 3 or 4 questions I'd like to throw out at you and see what your thoughts are. So as an integrator, one of our most important elements in our business is our employee talent, but it's also our single biggest cost input. So when our integrators are facing the most competitive market for talent we've seen in years, what strategies are you seeing your members do to retain and or attract talent when the cost of living is rising so fast and it's placing an incredible pressure on wages?
Yeah, it's been a big dilemma for a lot of our owners within the networks. And I was just listening to one of our committees last week, and these leaders from about 12 different companies around the U.S. talking about this exact point. And it was really, one of them made a comment. They just had an employee that was resigning, and the owner sat down and actually, penciled out on paper what they thought they were getting for $1 or $2 more at their new company, and going through the benefits package of where they currently are versus where they're planning to go, and having that open and honest discussion. I think a lot of employees get caught up on just what the salary is and not what their total compensation is. So we're actually working on a plan to help with the documentation that our integrators can use to help them show their employees all the benefits and have that kind of as a summary document. It's not just about what their actual salary is. There's all of the other things, including healthcare and other benefits they're probably getting, 401k plan, whether they have PTO or FTO, what have you, and actually summarizing that. I think a lot of employees are just surprised when they see it laid out in that manner, that they may not be better off by changing companies. In addition, there's a lot of reports coming out that people that have changed jobs over the last 18 to 24 months have found that they're being unhappy in that change. The grass is always greener, of course, in these situations, and you maybe get drawn to the money. We're finding that statistically now it's turning out that those changes haven't necessarily been good for the employee either.
I think one of the ideas you and I kicked around a couple of weeks ago, and certainly with a couple of your companies, is the idea of bonusing out small amounts as opposed to large pay raises. Are you seeing that play out at all in your member companies?
Yeah, that's another one that was mentioned, and I still think we're actually doing that here at PSA. When you provide large increases year over year, as you know, you're somewhat stuck in that. It's really hard to go back and lower your overhead costs by clawing back or reducing anybody's compensation. But I think the employees are happier when they get a one-time, bonus or adjustment. And so the company, they feel like the company has gone out of their way. They understand like price of gas has gone up exponentially. And so I think that has a bigger impact than perhaps a large increase, which they only feel across the course of time. But from a company perspective, puts the company in perhaps a predicament 18 months from now, if there is any type of slowdown in the economy. Now they've got this overhead cost that they're going to have to figure out how to take care of, and that's something that is not easily changed.
I think that's a great approach. So moving on, when we face kind of these rising wage costs, and of course our manufacturing costs are going up every day, and we're in the business of selling projects for the future, what are your members doing to protect their business profitability in terms of thinking about entering contracts today or executing contracts they entered 2 or 3 months ago when price inputs or cost inputs are rising so rapidly?
Yeah, this I think is one of those areas that hadn't really been considered much prior to the pandemic, but now it's really mandatory that the integration channel really look at their terms and conditions in their contracts and make sure that that they're covered. I know that can't happen on all projects, but certainly 18 months ago, if you signed an agreement on a fixed cost contract, very difficult with all these prices. And we've seen upwards of 40-50% product increases from some of the suppliers. Wow. And if you were stuck at a price from 18 to 24 months ago, that's a painful hit to your business. So making sure that you have in there, and I think customers are not just seeing this in security or AV, they're seeing this across the board with every product they buy to support their organization. So I think they're much more amenable now than they were prior to the pandemic. So having covered in there how you're going to handle price increases, and I think these are just conversations. It should be covered, legality in your contracts, but conversations you also need to have with your customers and talk about it, and have that discussion that you're not trying to bilk them, you're not gouging, but you can show them your hard invoices and what the costs have been over the last. We're literally getting price increases from vendors on a weekly basis now that they used to have annual price increases. Now they have monthly, and some of them, every couple of weeks. So protecting yourself as an integrator is, I think, more important now than ever.
It's interesting that you suggest a tactic of transparency as a way of protecting yourself. And I certainly have met with owners in our industry that are finding that to be very viable technique. And then it's what's interesting for those of us of a certain age who've been doing this for more years than probably you and I would ever want to admit on camera. We've seen our industry move from kind of warehousing and being more distribution to being more project-led and value-added-led, which has led our purchasing to move from bulk purchasing to just-in-time, right? And so about the time we get everybody in the industry convinced that you maximize profit by doing just-in-time, the pandemic hits, and all of a sudden we're having to buy in bulk or buy the inventory in order to protect our projects so that by the time the material shows up, we actually can get the jobs done. Now, what tools or techniques should integrators consider as this business model has flipped on its head literally overnight for our integrators?
Yeah, it's been interesting to see the adjustment here. Of course, the stats recently showing that inventories have gone up slightly in North America, but when it comes to products that are needed to finish projects, that still seems to be a big issue. So we have seen on the AV side companies trying to bulk up more, buying monitors and things that are more generic that can be used regardless of any other product. Security makes it a little bit more difficult because there's a lot of proprietary products that only work with certain systems or in certain environments. But we've seen some of that, and of course we also get calls from a lot of our integrators that tell us they have excess inventory. So we're actually working on starting up a exchange, really just a bulletin board where they can post that they have excess product if anybody wants to buy it from them at cost, so that they can help each other out. So we're hearing lead times up of 2-3 years from some manufacturers now. Which are some of the bellwethers in these industries that just are not able to deliver, or certainly can't deliver at the quantity that they're being asked to deliver. And so a lot of our integration partners are looking ways of helping out others by selling their excess inventory. So we certainly have seen that trend, And now the trend is they've got products sitting on the shelf that they might want to help out somebody up with.
I think that is a phenomenal assistance to your member groups as they can convert equipment into cash, especially as you have to buy in bulk. The other factor to consider in buying ahead, of course, is your relationship with your bank. How are you seeing integrators change their thoughts about their banking relationships?
Yeah, certainly something that we highly advise, even prior to the pandemic and what's going on with inflation. We think every integrator should have a relationship with a bank. And these are the times when that relationship needs to be solid and on firm ground, right? So it might be a little late to try to start up a relationship. And a lot of integrators are kind of working on a cash and carry basis. But, having the banking customers that you can have a financial vehicle in place so you can borrow money and, to help get through some of these tough times is really important. So certainly we highly recommend that. And that's one of the benefits of working with PSA is that, we provide a lot of credit and terms, but certainly integrators are buying product from multiple sources and they should have that banking relationship to get over this hump.
That's excellent. And we'll go back to the other T word we used earlier, transparency with buyers. Often transparency with your banker will really help carry you forward in your business dealings.
Great. Yeah, they don't like surprises. So the more transparent you are, I think the better the relationship. And they're in the business of loaning money, so it's advantageous for them to loan our integration partners money, but they don't like the surprises. So it's great to have that relationship and talk to them often.
Thanks. That's great advice. On the last topic for today, outside of employees and manufacturers, right, the two cost inputs, are you seeing any changes in business strategies that your integrators are deploying as a way of thinking forward as we continue to think about inflation and perhaps recession and all the macroeconomic factors going on in the United States right now?
Well, we certainly know from the pandemic that companies that were selling more managed services tended to fare better than customers or integrators that were more project-based. So, projects can be put on hold or even canceled in extreme cases where people don't tend to cancel their recurring revenue projects. So, it's just money that's flowing into the integrators monthly. And we've seen those numbers, maintain during the pandemic. And I certainly think that's important now. But having those relationships with the customers is important, and reprioritizing your customer loyalty. Make sure you're having these conversations with your customers about where things go and what are their priorities, and how can you help. Not just trying to sell them a product, but maybe they're looking for something different. And having again those conversations, I think, are really important right now as we get into some uncertainty in the future.
Really appreciate your time today, Matt. This has been a great introduction for me personally, and I think it'll help our listeners manage their businesses better. So thanks for joining me on this episode of ClearTalk.
Thanks, Joel. Nice to see you.
Take care.